Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, discover Newfoundland and Labrador. Presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Anthony Mallinson. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Anthony, take it away.
Presentation today. You'll have a really good idea of everything you need to know to join us on the expedition if you've already signed up, or if it's something that you're considering for next year or the following year. You'll get a really good idea of what the expedition is going to look like and everything that we're going to get up to while we're on the trip. So we have a photo here just to start off from one of the highlights. Always really difficult on a trip like this to choose a highlight, but this is from Battle Harbor up in Labrador. Really beautiful spot where we actually get to spend 3 nights of the expedition. So before we get started, it's always nice to do a land acknowledgement. As we explore the lands and waters of Newfoundland and Labrador, we're going to be visiting the ancestral territories of the Beothuk, the Micmac, the Innu, and the Inuit people. And though the Beothuk are no longer with us, their story is quite inseparable from this land, and we commit to learning about their legacy alongside those living cultures of the Micmac, the Innu, and the Inuit people. And your expedition leader will be able to share some stories where appropriate about these cultures. We'll also meet with a lot of locals along the trip and have a lot of opportunities to learn about some of these cultures and some of those more modern cultures that are on the island of Newfoundland and up in Labrador today as well. So, like Rob mentioned, my name is Anthony Mallinson. I'm an expedition leader here with Natural Habitat Adventures. I work mostly out of our Churchill area, so I do our polar bear programs up there, and I also do the Northern Lights trips up there. I've been a wilderness guide for about 8 years now. I also work a lot on the west coast of British Columbia, where we see those beautiful grizzly bears and those spirit bears, and I'm extremely excited to be leading these Newfoundland trips this coming year. So I'll be working on all 3 coasts of Canada. Really exciting now. I'm presenting today from Rossland, which is in the southeast part of British Columbia. So if we've got any skiers listening right now, or folks from the States, it's just north of Spokane, Washington, and that's at Red Mountain Ski Resort. So a lovely little place in the southeast part of BC. Excited to get back out to Newfoundland in just a couple of days though for that first trip. So before we get started, before we have a chance to get talking about the trip, some of the activities, some of what the itinerary is actually going to look like, I really want to just get a little bit of a sense of place. We'll throw up this map of Canada. And I know we probably have a lot of listeners down from the States. We might have some listeners hopefully from Canada or some international listeners as well. So perhaps we have some folks that haven't been to Canada, or perhaps you've been to Canada, but I'd be willing to bet a lot of us haven't been out to that far eastern province. We haven't been out to Newfoundland and Labrador. So Labrador is that mainland part, that part that's on the mainland part of Canada, and Newfoundland is that island just offshore. And we'll be exploring both those parts of the province on this trip. So I've put a little road map up there as well, because Newfoundland, Labrador, really quite a large province. Labrador, we're really only exploring the southern part of the province. That's really where the road network allows us to go. And in Newfoundland itself, you'll see there's only one road that goes across the entire province. And it can be long drives. So that's why on this trip, we're actually taking advantage and we're taking a private charter flights. We're eliminating a lot of that driving that can become quite common on some of these Newfoundland trips. And we're actually taking a charter flight to eliminate some of those drives on the island. We'll zoom in a little bit. Some of you looking at the itinerary might have already seen this map that NatHab provides to us. So you can kind of see us bopping around the province a little bit there. All the trips are going to start down in the southern part of the province, down in an area called St. John's. So that's the capital of Newfoundland, Labrador. Really beautiful spot. We'll spend a number of nights down there. And then we'll move up to an area called Trinity. So you can see that on the map on the right, or on the map on the left, it's just below that town of Gander. So we'll spend some time in Trinity, actually 3 nights out there on the Bonavista Peninsula. And then we'll move on up to Battle Harbor. That's where we take that charter flight, saves us some of those long drives. Get on up to Battle Harbor, slow down the pace of the trip a little bit, relax up there for another 3 nights. And then we'll wrap up the the trip by spending some time in the Gros Morne Park area. So that national park area, which is that great northern peninsula of Newfoundland as well. So we really get to move around the entire province as well, and really get to take in a lot of those hot spots and really get to see everything that Newfoundland and Labrador has to offer in that 12 days that we have on the trip together. So like I said, we'll talk about what we need to pack, some of the accommodations and the transportation. I really just want to get a sense of place and some of the highlights of the trip. So I like to think of the trip being broken down into 4 main areas. The first is going to be that St. John's area where we all fly into. That's where you're going to meet your expedition leader. And that's on an area called the Avalon Peninsula. So while we're in that St. John's area, we'll get to visit a puffin and a murre colony. So if we have any birders in the group, absolutely amazing. Get out there. And even if you're not a birder, I guarantee it'll be an absolute highlight of the trip. Just hundreds of thousands of birds out on these colonies out there. So some of those beautiful puffins, we got common murres and thick-billed murres, lots of different seabirds out there. We'll explore some of the coastal towns. So a town called Petty Harbor, we'll get a chance to visit. And then we'll get out to the iconic Cape Spear area. So there's a beautiful lighthouse out at Cape Spear, and that's actually one of the easternmost parts of North America if we consider islands. So often known as a spot to watch that sunrise. We're going to come actually watch the sunset there, weather permitting. So I've got my fingers crossed that all 5 itineraries can get a beautiful sunset out there. It's nice and quiet and some really, really beautiful light that we get to see. After leaving that St. John's and Avalon area, we'll get to an area called the Bonavista Peninsula. So this is a photo overlooking the town of Trinity, where we're going to be base camp for 3 nights there. You can see it's a really small, beautiful community. Everything's within walking distance, and we're really nice, centrally located at a beautiful spot called Rosewood Suites. So we have 2 different marine safaris that we're doing from there. We're working with a local operator, Trinity Eco Tour. So we do 2 different marine safaris. We actually get to drive up the peninsula as well. We check out the historic Bonavista Lighthouse, as well as some of the geologic wonders along the peninsula itself, some of the national parks and UNESCO sites up there as well. Some of us will get an opportunity to challenge ourselves on the Skirwink Trail. So if you look that one up, it's one of the top trails in North America, but it's also one of the harder hikes on our entire itinerary. So it's about 3 miles or 5 kilometers. We'll see some images from that in a little bit. It's one of the harder hikes, so it's going to be an optional one. And for those of us that don't want to take that option, we can do a historical walking tour of the town of Trinity. I just had an opportunity to do that one myself. It was really quite fascinating listening to Kevin tell some stories about growing up in Trinity and some of that really old history. And then all the itineraries currently are scheduled in for a dinner and a show. And this will be at the Rising Tide Theater, which has been putting on shows for more than 40 years in that Trinity area. Really cool spot with lots of local actors and performers and local storylines that we get to listen to. So quite fun. From there, the third part of the trip will move up to that Battle Harbor area in Labrador. So we actually get to stay on Battle Harbor Island, Battle Island. It's a restored fishing community. We won't go into that full history in the webinar today because there's a really a lot that we get to learn when we're on the island itself, and a lot that your expedition leader can share with you as well as you're driving up there. But we get to walk through these buildings. These are restored buildings from the 1700s and 1800s, so really, really old history. We also get to slow down, like I said, just kind of relax, take the time to have some later morning breakfast, stroll around the island, take in some of those beautiful sights. We're also now at the eastern edge of the continent, so at Cape Spear, we're at the eastern edge if we consider islands. Out at Battle Harbor, actually at one of the easternmost points on the entire continent of North America. So we have an opportunity to go visit that spot, and then weather permitting, we can do boat excursions and look for more marine wildlife and things like that. So beautiful, beautiful highlight up at that Battle Harbor area. Finally, we'll end for a lot of the trips on the Great Northern Peninsula, that Gros Morne area. So this is an image of the Western Brook Pond. We get to do a private boat tour out to Western Brook Pond. You can see even on an overcast day like today, like the day that we were out on the boat, really, really beautiful views. So really stunning there. We'll get to hike through the tablelands, experience some of the geology that Gros Morne Park is known for. And then we'll get a chance to visit some of those enclave communities in the park. So Rocky Harbor, Woody Point, really known for a lot of the artistic community that lives there. And we'll get to visit some of these smaller shops and see some of this local artwork. Also, really great opportunity to just slow down and relax at the Gros Morne Inn. There's some hot tubs and saunas there, and we can spend some of the final afternoons just relaxing before flying out on the final day. So we've got a little bit of an idea of what the trip looks like. Hopefully some of those highlights. We'll keep talking about the activities and the transportation. But before we go further, I just want to start talking about what we should be packing, what we should not be packing, all those essentials that we want to make sure we're bringing. So we'll get into some lists in a moment, but we got some images here. Folks overlooking that Battle Harbor area, we can do some hiking out on that tundra. So you can see there's no trails. So we want some really sturdy footwear. You can see all these folks have nice hiking boots. They're water resistant boots. They have nice pants on, like active hiking pants as well, and then good upper layers as well, and a day pack. And they're all wearing some nice warm hats as well. So let's get into some lists here. We'll look at some weather first. I just pulled this up. We have a trip starting just this coming weekend. So on Sunday, we're welcoming our first trip to Newfoundland, meeting in St. John's there. So I pulled up some of the coming weather. We got a little bit of rain. We got a little bit of sun. I put it in Fahrenheit, so I apologize for our viewers that are working in Celsius. But for those of us working in Fahrenheit, makes it a little bit easier. So you can see some of those temperatures there. They always say in some of these coastal and remote areas, just wait 5 more minutes though, and the weather's going to change. And I've experienced that a lot in Newfoundland. You'll wake up to a foggy day. It'll be sunny in a little bit. It'll start raining a little bit later, and then we'll have a beautiful sunset in the evening. So a little bit of sun, a little bit of rain. You can see some of those temperatures, not too warm. What I want to point out though is that St. John's down in the south, we're going to be moving up to the northern part, up to Battle Harbor there. And you can see about 10 degrees Fahrenheit difference in some of those highs and lows. Still dealing with mid 40s in the evenings and mid 50s in the days. So we want to make sure that we're layering really well for this trip. And it can be a little bit tricky because we want to be making sure that we're packing for those warmer temperatures in the St. John's area and also having some layers for Battle Harbor. So you might be carrying around a layer for the first half of the trip, wondering what's going on, but up in that Battle Harbor area, you're definitely going to want some of those layers, or especially on some of those marine safaris that we're going out to in Trinity and some of those spots where we're going to be moving quickly on the boats. So I want to talk about some of those clothing essentials. And I just want to point out, we're going to be talking about essentials here. So I won't be talking about all your socks and pajamas and toiletries and things like that that you know that you need just on a standard trip that you'd like to travel with, or your book that you need for your plane. So make sure you refer to your pre-departure booklet for any of those other packing needs. I just want to make sure that we're talking about those clothing essentials that we'll need to make sure that we're having a successful trip out there. So there's another lovely photo of us exploring on Western Brook Pond a couple of weeks ago. You can see it's a little bit of an overcast day, a little bit chillier. And we all have those essentials that we're wearing. So we want to make sure we have a warm hat. In Canada, we call those toques. So you can see 3 of us in the photo wearing those warm toques. If you got one of those NatHab toques, or if you've got your own toque, make sure you're packing that along, even for those departures that are leaving a little bit later in August. So you might not wear that the entire time, but if we're out on the water, a little bit of wind can go a long way in really bringing that temperature down. So make sure you have a warm hat. And make sure you have some light liner gloves, if you have some wool gloves or something like that. If you have water resistant gloves, that's also really helpful. I find gardening gloves can go a long way. If we're out on some of those Zodiacs or something like that, you're getting a little bit of spray. Those can be really, really helpful. Make sure you have a nice big insulating layer. So you can see in this photo, 2 of the ladies there are wearing that nice down layer. The down's really, really handy. It packs away really well. We're traveling to a lot of different destinations on this journey, so make sure everything's nice and packable. That down goes a long way, or if you have a synthetic layer as well, that'll work quite well as well. And then make sure you have a fleece layer, a big sweater that you can pull over or zip up. That's going to be an important layer. If you can fit 2 of those in, that could go a long way if it gets a little bit damp as well. And then I like to have 2 to 3 base layers, either 2 to 3 long sleeve shirts or short sleeve shirts, and wool goes a really long way here. Try and avoid things like cotton, but synthetic materials and wool will go a long way. We have access to laundry at various points throughout the trip, but it is a little bit limited. So make sure you're packing strategically, and wool can be a really great layer, especially if we don't have access to laundry for a number of days. I like to carry at least 1 really lightweight bottom base layer. So this could be a pair of tights or something like that. And like I said, this is mostly going to be for up in that Battle Harbor area, or maybe we're going out on one of those boat tours and it's a little bit cloudy, it's a little bit windier. We're going to be sitting around for a couple hours. I know that I'm going to want one of those base layers on my bottom half as well. And then really, really essential for everyone coming on the trip is a waterproof jacket. So this waterproof jacket will also act as a windbreaker. We're going to be wearing them often on the boats. Some of the boats will have suits provided, but some of them we won't have any suits and we'll have to wear our own gear. So that windbreaker waterproof jacket can go a really, really long way. And then if you have the opportunity to get some waterproof pants as well, they can be really helpful for some of those hikes on the tundra or sitting around again on some of those boats. And then make sure you have 2 pairs of some kind of hiking pant or some kind of pant that you like to do activity in, especially if one of those gets damp. It'll give you the opportunity the next day to wear that second pair. And those will work at all the dining facilities that we're eating at. You don't need to wear any fancy pants or anything like that. But like I said, make sure you're referring to the pre-departure booklet for any other suggestions. And then super, super important, like we already mentioned, is that water resistant, sturdy footwear. A lot of the trails that we're walking on have roots uneven terrain, walking over some of that tundra. There might not even be a trail. So make sure you have that sturdy footwear. Make sure it's water resistant in case we're dealing with some rain or in case we're walking over some muddy areas as well. And then like our little friend in the corner, the onion is dressed like an onion. So if you're packing and if you're thinking about what to wear during the trip, always check in with your expedition leader, of course. But if you're packing, make sure you're thinking about packing or thinking about wearing layers as you go. And it's a really great time to think about that in Newfoundland because the weather changes so quickly. We're going to be pulling layers on and off, leaving layers in the vehicles, taking layers on the boats, and always know that you'll have that opportunity to leave things in the bus that you don't want for the rest of the day. So just keep that in mind, that we want to be dressing like an onion and keeping our layers in mind. So some other essentials I just want to mention, not clothing related, but essentials that'll make the trip really, really great for you guys. It'll bring a lot more value to the trip if we make sure we all have access to some of these at all points during the trip. So the first is going to be binoculars. So like I said, we're moving around so much, we don't have the opportunity to have spare binoculars for all our guests. So make sure you're bringing your own binoculars. If you have questions about magnification or things like that, please refer to your pre-departure booklet, but 8x42, 10x42, anything in that range is going to be really, really perfect. Looking at some of those seabirds, looking at some of that wildlife in the distance is going to be really, really wonderful to have those binoculars. If we have any photographers, make sure you're taking your standard photography equipment. A telephoto lens can go a long way for some of those bird photos, obviously. Or if you're not into photography that much, make sure you got your phone with you and make sure you're familiar with using those camera settings. That's obviously something your expedition leader can help you out with as well. But as we all know, the phones these days are taking amazing photography. So if you're not wanting to lug around a big camera, the phone's going to go a really long way on this trip. So you can see in the image there, we're all wearing sunglasses. It's not that sunny a day, but out in these marine environments, often getting a lot of reflection off the water. So make sure you got some sunglasses. Never a bad idea to have a backup pair. Make sure you got sunscreen and bug repellent. Your expedition leader, some of the local guides will always make sure we have that as a backup as well. But if you're carrying your own, that's nice and handy to have that on you at all times. Make sure you got a water bottle, and always nice to have that thermos, that NADHAB thermos or mug on you as well, just in case we have opportunities for tea and coffee at some of these spots. And then always make sure you got those medications and your wallet and ID that you're traveling with. And this is a good list, as well as maybe throwing an extra layer and gloves and stuff to keep in your day pack. So your expedition leader is going to go over that in your welcome dinner, what we want to have ready kind of every day in that day pack to throw in the bus, to take in the boats and things like that. But this is a good list of things. So make sure as you're packing, all these are already listed in that pre-departure booklet, but make sure you're really paying attention and making sure you have these essential items to make the trip really successful. So we're going to move into arrival and some of the modes of transportation and some of the accommodation, and we'll talk some more about some of the activities on the trip. So you might be worried coming into the capital of Newfoundland, this busy metropolis. It might be frazzling already to think about the airport. Good luck for you, as it's a nice small airport. It's a really lovely spot. It's nice and easy to navigate through. Our local operators are going to be there waiting. They'll have a NATHAB sign, so we're working with a company called Jiffy Cabs. So they're going to be waiting at door number 2. So this information should have been sent to you just recently. It'll be live in your portal if you're coming on a trip with us this year. So that's information for 2025. So look for that Jiffy Cab representative. If you don't see them, there's a number that's given there. The good thing in Newfoundland is there's no area code that you need to put in, so you can see the number here. The area code is 709 if it feels awkward putting in a number without an area code. But look for that Jiffy Cab representative. It's only about a 10 or 15 minute drive to the Alt Hotel in St. John. So it's a nice, lovely short drive. The gratuity for that cab has been included, so please don't feel the need to leave gratuity. And just know that it's all taken care of for you, and you will be whisked away to the wonderful accommodations in St. John's, and we'll be staying at the Alt Hotel. So a nice, easy, quick ride down there, right on the harbor. You can see beautiful views out of those rooms. We'll be staying at the Alt Hotel. It's quite a lovely spot. That's where we'll be doing our welcome dinner. So that's your first spot. You're going to meet your expedition leader, meet the rest of the group for the rest of the trip, right in one of those rooms in the basement there. So check in at the front desk. There'll be some literature waiting for you there as well. And if you're coming in on the first day of the trip, your expedition leader will likely be waiting around in the lobby for you as well. If you're coming a little bit earlier, Alt Hotel is a really great place to explore St. John's. It's a really centrally located spot right on the harbor. St. John's a nice small little town, so everything's within quite easy walking distance. Make sure though, if you are coming in early, have a look at your pre-departure booklet. Make sure you're reading through some of that literature. Some of the trips are optimized, different timing for some of the different boats that we're taking out. So some of us have an opportunity to explore St. John's together, and some of us will be doing that independently. So make sure you have a good look through that literature to make sure you're not doubling up on something with the rest of the group. But coming in a couple days earlier is never a bad idea. Arriving at St. John's, taking the time to kind of fully arrive in the city and checking out some of the history of St. John's. So all these towns in eastern Newfoundland, really, really well known for their history. They've been some of the earliest occupied communities in North America, at least with respect to European settlement. So a lot of deep, deep history in these areas, a lot of beautiful homes to check out, really well known for their colorful homes and history in the area, and also really well known for their dining experiences. So if you have the opportunity to come a little bit earlier, base yourselves there at the Out Hotel. Make sure you talk to the folks at the front desk. They're really friendly. They'll point out some areas to go check out, or if you need some extra gear, there's stores around, things like that, if you need anything last minute at all. So quite a wonderful spot to check out in St. John's. You might be wondering, Anthony, how are we getting around St. John's and Trinity? Because we are driving a little bit here and there, and that's when we're going to start working with our local operator, which is Trinity Eco Tours. So it's most likely that you'll meet Skipper Bob and Skipper Dean. Steve might be working with us as well, but some great folks that we're working with, and they have these wonderful Sprinter vans. So big vehicles can sit up to about 14 people, I believe, and we actually have 2 of those vehicles. So this group, we're maxing out at 14 guests maximum for this itinerary. So split between those 2 vehicles, a lot of room for you and your things. Everyone will get a window seat. We'll all get an area to put our day bags and things like that. So like I mentioned, that vehicle is going to be with us for the day. If we need to leave things in there, it's going to be a nice, safe spot. So drive times in that Trinity area and that St. John's area are not actually that long. On the first day, we're going to drive down to Witless Bay, only about 45 minutes to do some viewing at the puffin colony there. When we drive from St. John's to Trinity, it'll be a couple hours, but we're making sure that we're going to stop at some beautiful places along the way and kind of break those drives up. So spending a little bit of time in these Trinity Eco Tours vans and opportunities to do interpretation. We have microphones, we have things like that. Also really great to nap in. I took a nap in one a couple weeks ago. So really great vehicles to be driving around with. When we're in Trinity itself, I mentioned lots of opportunities just to walk around. So we're going to hopefully be walking to dinner. We're going to be hopefully walking to the Rising Tide Theater. We're going to be walking around to some of these stores. We can take those vans when we need, but we can hopefully walk around if the weather's nice. We're also going to be taking these wonderful Zodiacs that they have here for us. So we actually have 2 of these for our group again, so we'll have lots of room to spread out on these. You can see they have that kind of stirrup style seat. When we go out with Trinity Eco Tours, really wonderful, we get this full immersion suit. So you don't need to be worried about this open ride going really quickly and the gear that you need to take for that. We actually get a full suit. You'll want a hat, you'll want some layers, and we'll talk about that before we go out. But you can take your little day bag with your camera, your water bottle, some extra layers for your head and hands, and you'll be super comfortable in those seats. And we get to go out in these boats on 2 occasions, and Bob and Dean and Steve know those waters incredibly well. So they rip us around to some really cool spots, looking for marine wildlife, looking for birds, hopefully visiting another puffin colony, and just checking out some of this amazing coastline that Newfoundland has to offer. So like I mentioned, all the itineraries at some point are going to take a private charter. It saves us a lot of that back and forth driving and kind of cutting off a big chunk of that interior driving that we're doing. We don't want to do all that in vehicles. So we get a flight. We get to fly up to Labrador. Saves a big section for us, saves that ferry for us as well. Only about an hour-long flight. We're going to be flying with this Beechcraft 1900 with NovaJet, a private charter. We get to show up, roll on. There's a few kind of restrictions that your expedition leader will go over the night before with respect to batteries and things like that, how we want to make sure we're packing our bags. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. And then when we land in Labrador, that'll be saying goodbye to our Trinity Eco Tour friends, and we'll be met by the wonderful folks at Shears. So I apologize for the blurry photo there. That's the only photo I could find of Joey. His father owns the company, so that's Joey Shears. It's a bus service based in Rocky Harbor, which is a little community in the Gros Morne area. So we've got a 28-person vehicle there. It'll pick us up on that Labrador side after we get dropped off by our private charter plane, and it'll whisk us up to that Battle Harbor area. This is about a 2-hour drive, 2.5-hour drive, a nice opportunity again to rest. But we just did this drive. We saw a lot of wildlife. We saw ptarmigan out there. We saw moose, an owl cut across in front of the vehicle. So always great to have our eyes open. There was only 4 of us there. So if we got 14 folks looking out the window, hopefully we can spot some more wildlife. So a nice, beautiful drive along the coast of Labrador up there. And then we'll spend a little bit more time in this vehicle in that Gros Morne area as well. When we're driving down that Great Northern Peninsula, we'll spend a couple more hours in this Shears bus as well. But a really lovely final transportation that we have. After we get dropped off by Shears to get out to Battle Harbor, it's a special spot. So like I mentioned, no vehicles out there. We have to take this passenger ferry. It's about an hour, 15 minutes, depending on conditions. It's also one of the vehicles or vessels that we can use to do some marine wildlife viewing up there. So some days, conditions permitting, as always, weather permitting, we can get out in this boat, see if we can see any whales, see if we can cruise some more of that coastline up there and see some of the other spots up in Labrador. So we'll be on this Battle Harbor ferry, hopefully a number of times. And then some of the itineraries are going to be taking this Labrador ferry as well. This will be one of the biggest boat that we're on. It crosses from that kind of northern tip of Newfoundland up into the southern part of Labrador, back and forth a number of times throughout the day. So some of our itineraries are taking that to get back onto the island in Newfoundland. And it's always a good reminder here, if you suffer from any motion sickness or things like that, there are precautions you can take beforehand. There are things you can talk to your doctor about, but there's also a lot of over-the-counter options. So Gravol Ginger is a really great option. There's chewable ones, or there's little tablets that you can take. So if you find yourself prone to motion sickness, chat with your expedition leader, let them know beforehand, and they'll make sure they're taking care of you. They'll often always be carrying some of this Gravol Ginger or some kind of equivalent, and a good idea to carry that on your own as well if you know that you might be prone to some motion sickness. So we'll take some time to talk about some of the accommodations. I know I mentioned already the Alt Hotel, that beautiful spot that we have in St. John's, but we are moving around a little bit. So let's take some time to look at some of the accommodations, because we're really quite blessed with the places that we get to stay on this trip. So this is in Trinity, where we're going to be based for 3 nights of the trip. Early on in the trip, we'll leave St. John's, we'll get to Trinity, and we'll be based at this Rosewood Suites area. Really, really beautiful spot. The building restored from the mid-1800s. Just absolutely wonderfully appointed. Big rooms, big suites, those beautiful handmade quilts on each bed. Michelle, the owner, takes really, really lovely care of us. There's a lovely kind of central area that we can all gather in the mornings. And like I mentioned, really close to walk from Rosewood Suites down to Trinity Eco Tours, easy to walk over to the ice cream place or the chocolate shop or some of those beautiful historic spots around Trinity as well. We'll be going up to Battle Harbor. I've mentioned Battle Harbor a number of times. I also mentioned I won't dive fully into that history. We just don't have time on the webinar, but you can kind of see some of the buildings there. They've all been restored. So some of these buildings are dating back to the 1700s. You can see that main building, that main red building along the water, with that big red roof. That's the dining hall. That's where we'll get dropped off by the ferry right on that wharf. And there's that building with the big red roof. And then there's that building with the black roof kind of up and to the right. That's the general store. That's where the lounge is and the bar, kind of the after hours hangout area. That's where the only place on the island will get Wi-Fi. So connection's a little bit spotty there. And then we'll be staying in that building up kind of the top right with the red roof. It's called the Merchant Building. It's a building that was converted for folks to come and stay at. It has these beautiful rooms, beautiful suites, all with gorgeous views looking out of the harbor or looking out of the rest of the buildings. So really absolutely beautiful spot that we get to stay up in Battle Harbor. And like I mentioned, just a place that we get to go up, and it's just like walking through history. We get to go up there, experience this history and slow down and just really take it all in. It's a special spot that not many people get to go visit. Some of us will be staying at the Torrent River Inn. So as we transition back down from Battle Harbor, Labrador into that Gros Morne area, we'll probably be arriving here a little bit later in the evening and leaving a little bit earlier. So we'll just be transitioning through this area, but it makes a really nice stopover point for us and sets us up quite well to get into that Gros Morne area. And then finally, we'll be spending 2 lovely nights at the Gros Morne Inn. Super, super lovely spot right on the shores of Bond Bay, overlooking Rocky Harbor, overlooking Woody Point, some of those communities, and really quite well situated to get to the tablelands and some of these other hikes that we want to do. Beautiful spot. You can see the dining room area there where we'll be doing a number of dinners, and we'll be doing a number of breakfasts as well. And like I mentioned, if you've got to this point in the trip and you've taken it all in and you're feeling a little bit tired, it's a great opportunity to do some relaxing. There's a nice wood-fired sauna there. There's some hot tubs as well, just to take an opportunity to just sit back and soak it all in. Really lovely spot. So always on people's minds is dining experiences. Can we cater to different dietary concerns, things like that? And the answer is definitely yes. So Newfoundland is really known for its seafood, but we've gone through this trip now with a number of vegetarians or people that can't eat red meat, or people that have gluten sensitivities, things like that. And we know from visiting all the restaurants and all our local operators that we can cater to all these different dietary concerns. So this is an image here from Bonavista Social Club, one of the beautiful spots that we get to. I got the fingers crossed that we'll get that nice sunny weather as well. But regardless, it's a beautiful spot to be dining at. Katie takes great care of us there. That's our Trinity Eco Tours team. So that's Skipper Bob and Dean there, and Shannon as well. So we'll be meeting all those folks out in Trinity. And then we have some dishes from the Gros Morne Inn, and then some cod tongues. We got some classic dishes that we can have in Newfoundland. We'll get a chance to try a lot of those in St. John's at some of the seafood places we go to as well. And then there's always opportunity just to sit back and relax. This is at the Twine Loft, also in Trinity there. They've got a wonderful balcony that we can just arrive a little bit earlier, sit back and have some lovely drinks. So they've got some non-alcoholic beverages, alcoholic beverages, a lot of it made from iceberg water. So if you're looking for something made from icebergs, Newfoundland is the place to go. So make sure you're looking out for that iceberg beer, that iceberg wine, or even those iceberg spirits that we can get into sometimes. So one of the evenings on the trip in Trinity, we'll be having a classic boil up, as we call it. So it's going to be whatever's in season. For us, it happen to be lobster and crab. It could be cod. It could be whatever they're bringing in fresh off the ocean. So if it's going to be a nice sunny day, we'll be doing that outside, down by the water, maybe on the dock, maybe on some picnic benches, a nice, lovely setting. If you're not comfortable with lobster, things like that, like I said, there'll be some other options for those dietary concerns. And if you don't want to crack your own open, we're always happy to crack those open. But it'll be a great fun night. And for those of us that have heard of it, that might be one of the nights that we do our screech in. So I won't go into detail on that, but if you know, then you know. So another look at some of the dining opportunities we have on the right-hand side there. That big dining area is at Battle Harbor. So we do a more communal style dining there. There might be a few other guests on the island, but it'll mostly be our group that's out there doing a communal style. And like I mentioned, the ladies out there are super lovely, and they can take any dietary concerns and deal with all of those. And then Katie taking care of us at the Bonavista Social Club as well. So going to be some really, really great dining experiences, some really great seafood, some really great fresh local things. And really excited to check out a lot of these places with folks. So we'll talk about some trip activities. I think we're winding up near the end, and then we'll go through some more highlights of the trip as well, and some of the stuff that we can expect or hope to see maybe. So there is a lot of hiking on the trip. If you go through the physical requirements, have a good read through of those physical requirements. It is rated as a moderate for those physical requirements. And these two photos, don't let them scare you. I chose two photos of kind of some of the harder terrain that we get to navigate. So the photo on my right is a narrow photo going up the stairs there. That's on that Skirwink Trail. So that's that trail I said was optional. It's about 3 miles, 5 kilometers, has a bit of elevation here and there, has a number of areas where we have to navigate up and down stairs, just like that. So no, if you're not comfortable with that, that's one of the optional ones, but that is some of the terrain that we could be dealing with. The picture here on the left is from Battle Harbor. So Battle Harbor has a beautiful trail that goes around the island. It's quite short, maybe just about a mile at its most, and it is a loop trail. It's got some interpretive signs on it, beautiful viewpoints out over the ocean and out over the town itself. But you have to loop around and either come up or down this section. So we were experimenting a little bit. It's a little bit easier to go up, but you can also go down if you're feeling comfortable. I'd recommend going up. And the great thing is, if you get to this spot and you say, hey, I can't handle this, you can just walk back the other way. It makes a really great out and back trail as well. Still get those beautiful views, still a really nice stroll. This is one of the opportunities as well to see some of that Arctic wildlife. Like there's a few Arctic fox hanging around on the island, so nice to just slow down. So if you can't handle this, you can just go out and back. Makes a really great trail as well. So that Skirwing Trail is, if you manage those stairs, you get some views like this on the left. So we actually walk out to that grassy plateau further in the distance, those sea cliffs out there. So wonderful walking, but you can see a little bit of uneven terrain, a little bit tricky as well still. But those are some of the opportunities. If you're able to navigate some of that terrain, we can get out on those trails and have a really great time. The image on the right, you can see the trails a little bit still uneven, tricky to navigate, but the bigger concern there is that exposure. So there's a number of times that we're going to be walking near seaside cliffs and things like that as we approach bird colonies. So this is a photo from Elliston. We're walking out to a puffin colony. So we see those big colonies in St. John's, but this is actually one of the most accessible puffin colonies in North America, this one at Elliston. We walk right out there and the puffins are nesting just offshore. And sometimes even coming onto the side that we're on. So we have to navigate some of that terrain, and just know there's always going to be an expedition leader or a local guide on hand to help you out. And also know that we have hiking poles. So if you're wondering about packing hiking poles, if you've got your own, you're really comfortable and you want to take those, feel free. But I'd also recommend just saving that space. We'll have hiking poles the entire time with our Trinity Eco Tours partner. We'll have hiking poles up in Labrador, and we'll have hiking poles when we wrap up our trip in Gros Morne. So no need to bring those along at all. And just know it can be quite handy. So check in with your expedition leader. Let them know that you're thinking you might need a hiking pole, but if you're wearing new big hiking boots that are clunky or something like that, it can often be handy just to take one hiking pole just to help you through some of that trickier terrain. If you're thinking it all looks a little intense, all those hikes and things like that, just know that there's a lot of easier activities that we do as well. So there's a lot of strolling around these communities. I mentioned some of that really deep history that we have in Newfoundland and some of these coastal communities and up in Labrador. So we do take a lot of time to explore some of those communities, walk through, check out some of the sites, chat with some of the locals, see if they're bringing any fresh fish or anything like that. Check out some of those old lobster traps and things like that. So a lot of nice strolling around and really taking in a lot of those sites as well. And then I also mentioned, and hopefully you're aware, a lot of marine-based activities. So we go on a number of different expeditions out on the water. We do some of those marine safaris. We'll be on the ferry up in Labrador. The photo on the left here is a photo taken from O'Brien's tour. So that's a tour we do down in Witless Bay. That's where we visit those colonies of puffins and murres where we're seeing hundreds of thousands of birds. And that's the only tour we do on the entire itinerary that's not private. So we'll be on a bigger boat with some other folks. That's where you're going to want to bring layers and things like that. We won't be given any suits. So if you got those extra wind layers, things like that, it's going to be perfect for heading out down to O'Brien's. And absolutely incredible just to see those hundreds of thousands of birds nesting right above the boat there. And then you'll see a photo on the right. That's from that expedition at Trinity Eco Tours. So you can see we're fully geared up there. We're in that more open boat, moving a bit faster. So we don't need to be fully layered up because we've been given those insulated full body Mustang suits that makes for quite a comfortable ride there. So some boat activities, some marine activities. And when we're up in Labrador, like I mentioned, we'll be back on the water as well. And then just some time for some fun times. So there's a lot of great shops. Like I mentioned, a lot of really great local small communities where we got artists doing hand knitted things, doing painting, carvings. There's a lot of glass work as well. There's a lot of hooked rugs. There's a lot of pottery. So really great opportunity just to have some fun. We are on vacation. We got a full packed schedule, but we want to just slow down a little bit, make sure we're taking the time to visit these local spots, connect with those locals, and really just have a great time in Newfoundland and Labrador. So I've got a few highlights I wanted to share with you guys as well. And then it looks like we should have a little bit of time at the end for questions. So we do have a lot of opportunity to be out on the water, like we've talked about, looking for marine wildlife. So we took this photo just last week. The humpbacks are starting to come really, really quite lovely back to these waters. So if you go on Newfoundland Labrador tourism, you'll see that big slogan. They always say the largest humpback population in the world returning to their waters. And it's just becoming whale season right now. So really great opportunities. I know they've been seeing some really great whales down in that Witless Bay area as well. If you're following on social media, some of these operators, they're seeing sperm whales. We were seeing minke whale. We saw humpback whale. There's other marine wildlife out there. We were seeing different types of seals, and like I mentioned, a lot of seabirds out there as well. We've got our fingers crossed for ourselves and for our friends at Trinity Eco Tours. There's a stellar sea eagle that has been resident there in Trinity for a number of years, and hopefully she's making her way back up in the next couple of weeks. So if we've got any birders coming on trips, keep your fingers crossed that Stella's making her way back up to that Trinity area. So as I mentioned already, a lot of great opportunities just to take in some of these historic buildings. So this is up on Signal Hill. This is in St. John's area. So if you have a chance to explore on your own, or some of the itineraries get to go as a group together up to that Signal Hill area. So make sure you read through your literature first. But really, really beautiful, a spot not to be missed. And aside from St. John's, some of those other communities we visit, Petty Harbor, Trinity, Battle Harbor, just really soaked in history. And we get to walk through that and experience. So Newfoundland can be really quite unique for that. So really, really taking the time to experience that history in person. So for our friends that love birds out there, these ones aren't as flashy, maybe as those black and white birds with the big orange beaks, the puffins. But these are quite lovely birds, and we see them in the hundreds of thousands. So the bird with its wings spread out, we have a common murre there. We also see the thick-billed murre, and we see these common murre in quite literally hundreds of thousands of individuals down in the Witless Bay area. So absolutely amazing to see, even if you're not into photography, just to get that experience, really incredible. And then we get some really cool razorbill birds there. Those birds with a really cool kind of square beak. We got guillemots coming in with the kittiwakes. We have this massive great black-back gulls. We have gannets just dive bombing into the water. So really incredible for marine birds out on the coast there. This is an image from Battle Harbor. A lovely day out there, but still big waves coming in. And you can just sit up at the top of the island. This is that trail that I was saying is a loop trail, or maybe an out and back trail for some of us. You can sit up there and just watch the breakers come in. Just take a moment. There's benches up there. There's some interpretation signs, so you could just take a stroll through and just really soak it all in. It's a really lovely spot. This is an image from Gros Morne. So from Western Brook Pond, getting back to the end of that pond, there's just some towering cliffs. We won't get into the geology, but some amazing geology back there. Some beautiful waterfalls. Just absolutely really powerful scenery. So we'll get to do a private boat cruise back there. It'll be a really lovely part of the trip. I'm really looking forward to getting back out there as well. Always a highlight for me is seeing some of those lighthouses. So I like the idea of lighthouse bagging, where we're going around trying to see as many lighthouses as we can. And we'll see a lot of lighthouses on the trip, and a lot of really historic lighthouses that we can share some stories about. This is that Cape Spear lighthouse again, the newer version of it. So really beautiful. And like I said, I've got my fingers crossed that we all get a wonderful sunset out there, or get some really dramatic lighting, maybe with some clouds out there as well. And then a few more images here. This is an Arctic fox. So fingers crossed as well that we get this experience. We got 3 nights on Battle Harbor, guys, so we got a lot of time to explore up there, and there are some resident Arctic fox up there. And this guy's just molting from that white winter into that kind of black and gray color phase that he'll have in the summer. So keep your eyes out for them as you're walking around the town, or as you're walking around the small little community there, or as you're walking around some of the islands. Keep your eyes out for these beautiful Arctic foxes. And then finally, like I mentioned, we got those beautiful puffins. We'll have opportunity down in Witless Bay to see hopefully hundreds of thousands of these guys just flapping through the air. They look like little baked potatoes almost. But we'll also have a chance, hopefully at Elliston, weather permitting, conditions permitting, to get out to that puffin colony and have a really great opportunity, hopefully, to get a little bit closer to some of these birds, and opportunity for photography, opportunity to just sit there and take it all in and have a really wonderful trip. But with that, Rob, I think I'm going to wrap it up with those highlights. I'm going to pass it back to you. It looks like we got some time for questions. So thank you, everyone, for joining me. I'll pass it back to Rob, and hopefully we've got some questions coming in that I can clear up any final questions folks have. Thanks, Rob.
All right. Thank you so much, Anthony. Now, before we dive into the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that if you do have questions, you can submit them via the question field in your control panel. If you go to the upper right-hand corner of the GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see those 3 lines. Go ahead and click on that, and it'll drop down a menu, go to questions, and that's where you can submit them. So let's dive into questions. So Anthony, how many people are generally on these trips at one time?
So this itinerary, we're going to have 14 guests maximum. So there'll always be one expedition leader. There's going to be 14 guests. And for that time that we're in Trinity and that St. John's area, there's going to be 2 local guides that we're working with. And then when we go up to Battle Harbor and some of those areas, we'll often have a local guide out with us, just pointing out some of those hot spots as well. But yeah, 14 guests.
Gotcha. Thank you. And what time of year do we run these trips?
So this is our first year running this itinerary. And like I mentioned, I'm getting packed. I leave in about 10 hours to fly back to Newfoundland. Just got back a couple days ago. So flying back out there, and our first trip this year is going to start on the 22nd of June. And we're going to run these trips, the final trips wrapping up about August 20th. So a little bit of a range there. And next year, I know we're hoping to expand a little bit. So a little bit earlier, I know we got some trips starting early June next year, mid-June, about June 14th, I believe. And then kind of going a little bit later into the end of August there.
Gotcha. And so if I want to see puffins, is there a particular time I should be going there, or can I see them all year?
So with the dates that NatHab has for these itineraries, we should be pretty set for puffins for most of those departures. So the puffins are coming in late May, early June, so perfect timing for us. I mentioned I was there just a number of weeks ago, and we saw a lot of puffins on that trip. And then they're typically leaving earlier in September. So kind of staying right in that time period that we have. So we've really set it up ideally. The whales are coming in, so it's whale season starting, wildflower season starting up in Labrador in those areas, and then the seabirds are in as well. So it's really ideal timing.
Great. You just nailed a couple of questions there. And what about caribou? Are caribou something that we would see?
Yeah, so mammals on Newfoundland, there aren't too many terrestrial mammals. It's always interesting just doing the trip and going through some of those wildlife lists, and all those possibilities are out there. And we did see a lot of those animals that were on the list. We're seeing a lot more moose on the island than caribou. And unfortunately, on the last trip we didn't see any caribou on that trip, but we definitely had our eyes peeled, particularly in that Gros Morne area, that Great Northern Peninsula area. There's a number of caribou herds that are quite well known to frequent some of those areas. And we definitely spent some time in those spots, and we had our eyes peeled out the windows of the bus. We just didn't get lucky. But as well, that drive up in Labrador on that coastal drive is another great opportunity to keep your eyes open for caribou. They can just be a little bit elusive.
Gotcha. Thank you. So let's talk about clothing for a second. You recommend hiking pants. Can you talk about what that means actually?
Definitely. Yeah. So sorry, that was kind of a broad statement there, a hiking pant. I like to wear a pant that's comfortable. For some folks, this could be tights. I know some folks are hiking in tights and things like that. I like to wear a pant that's a little bit looser fitting. It's got some pockets. It's usually a synthetic material that's a little bit breathable. It doesn't need to be water resistant, because I like to have if I have the opportunity, I like to have a rain pant that I'm going to throw on top of that. So it's got a good amount of pockets. So think brands like Patagonia or Outdoor Research or Fjallraven, or you can find things on Amazon and things like that. But a nice synthetic pant, some of them have zips down the side. They can let a little bit of air in. But there's a number of good brands out there and kind of sturdy things that are going to work quite well on the trip.
Gotcha. Thank you. And how physically challenging are the hikes? Do I need to be in great shape?
So if we can kind of remember back to some of those images, so those images walking up the stairs, that's going to be kind of the most physical challenging part of the trip. Part of the hikes. I'd say the Skirwink Trail is definitely going to be the hardest option on this entire itinerary. And for how it's scheduled this year, we have that as an optional option, where the other option would be doing a guided hike around the community of Trinity and getting a little bit more of the lay of the land there and talking to some locals, while the rest of us are doing that Skirwink Trail. And that Skirwink Trail, it's going to be about 350 feet or about 100 meters of elevation up and down as we navigate some of those stairs. And there's going to be rocks and roots and things like that. And like I said, it ends up being about 3 miles. We want to make sure we're going at a pretty good pace, so we're not taking too long. But you also, myself included, I like to slow down on these hikes, take in the viewpoints, learn about new species, take some time for interpretation. So it's not a kind of all out. We'll take some time to do those hikes. So I think even now we have about 2.5, 3 hours scheduled for that Skirwink Trail. So that gives a good idea kind of the pace that we're hoping to get, and also some of those activities. If you have a chance to go back at the recording, look at some of the images, you can get a good idea of what some of those coastal hikes look like. But there's no climbing mountains or things like that. There can be ups and downs, and there can be a few big steps here and there. But like I said, we got those hiking poles, and if there's a challenging step or something like that, there's always going to be someone there to lend a hand for sure.
Gotcha. Thank you. And so if I do select the hiking trip, would there still be time for me to tour the local villages and see the local people as well?
Definitely, always. So I know it can be always challenging to say choose one or the other, but the way we've set up this itinerary, everything's kind of optimized to take in. We have a lot of time. So for example, in Trinity, we have a lot of time to explore on our own. There's interpretation signs everywhere you go. So it's kind of like walking through a living museum. Same on Battle Harbor as you're walking around that community. If you want to kind of skip out on one of the bigger hikes, take some time to explore on your own, or join us on all the big hikes, you'll still have time to explore on your own. You can walk through those communities, read those signs, meet local people just out and about. Newfoundland is an incredibly friendly place. You might go out for a couple minutes and spend an hour talking to some locals. So you will have time on your own and time with the rest of the group to definitely explore all the places we go for sure.
And is there maybe a local music scene if I wanted to catch some local music? Anything like that? Does that exist?
That certainly exists. So I know, and obviously trip dependent. I know we're trying to set up some things on Battle Harbor to bring in some local musicians, because if you hadn't had the opportunity yet to Google Newfoundland kitchen party music, there's some great playlists out there to get you excited for the trip. In Trinity, we'll be going to that Rising Tide Theater. And I know that the particular play we're going to is quite a musical version as well. And hopefully at some of the places we go to, there'll be some local artists. I know some of the boat tours we go on, they get a little bit musical as well. And then a lot of our dining experiences are a little bit earlier in the evening. So if there's opportunities to go out to some of the local establishments a little bit later in the evening for some local music, that's always an option as well. And you can chat with your expedition leader and let them know that's something you're interested in for sure.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. So you talked about meeting the First Nation folks. Is it in the local towns and the communities? Is that what you were referring to?
Definitely, and I didn't mean to misspeak there. So we'll, as with all NatHab tours, we want to make sure we're paying respect to the traditional keepers of the land and really learning about those cultures as we go on. And we don't have time to dive into it in this webinar. There is some really, as everywhere, there's some interesting and complicated First Nations history, particularly on the island of Newfoundland. And there are some active First Nations groups, the Mi'kmaq and the Innu in particular, and the Inuit up in Labrador as well, that are quite active and that are sharing stories with us. But as we go through the itinerary, there are very few Indigenous people that we actually get to meet. And there is a deeper history as to why that is and the reasoning behind that. The Beothuk people in particular are thought to have vanished. There are a number of folks that might have descended from Beothuk, but it's a little bit confusing. But there are a number of visitor centers, interpretation centers that we go and we get to learn about these cultures. And then there are some locals, hopefully, that we'll meet along the way and kind of dive into some of these cultures and learn about some of these stories and share what I can and share what the other expedition leaders can as well, where appropriate, definitely.
Great, thank you. What about lighthouses? Are there any lighthouses there?
Definitely, there are a number of lighthouses. There's some beautiful spots that we get to visit, some kind of more modern ones, and some of those classic lighthouses. You might have seen imagery of the Bonavista Lighthouse or the Cape Spear Lighthouse or the Point Lemoore Lighthouse in Labrador. And like I mentioned, I love lighthouses. I think they're absolutely beautiful for photography or just getting a chance. They're often on these remote places perched on the edge of the cliffs and things like that. So definitely a number of lighthouses that we'll get to visit, either on foot or seeing them from the boat as well, which is quite fun.
Are there going to be opportunities for maybe night photography?
So there could be opportunities for night photography, particularly if you've come set up. I know we're not carrying any tripods specific for photography on the trip. So if you want to bring a tripod or something like that, there should be room to bring that along. Trinity itself in that Bonavista Peninsula, they're now recognized as a dark area. So so it's quite a great area for nighttime photography and things like that. And particularly up in Battle Harbor as well, very little light pollution. And like I said, Battle Harbor, we got that nice dinner. It starts at 6 o'clock. We wrap up, got opportunities to kind of relax and lounge around or walk around the island. So really great opportunities there for nighttime photography in particular.
Do you have any particular lenses that you recommend that we make sure we have on this trip?
Definitely. So if I'm always thinking of telephoto lenses, particularly for that bird photography, and we're out on those marine tours and things like that. So on the last trip, I was traveling with a 2 to 600 mil. I know a lot of our expedition leaders I was working with. One of them had a fixed 600 mil. Anything up in that 400 mil range would be really ideal for some of that photography. So if that's what you're working with, kind of that max amount. It's sometimes a little bit tedious to be carrying around some of those bigger lenses, I know at times. So make sure if you're coming with one of those, make sure you have the appropriate cases and things like that. And we can always have a chat the night before what we want to be taking out. For some of those boat excursions, we want to be taking those big lenses. Some of them might be a little bit of a bumpier ride, and we want to maybe just take something a little bit smaller. But nice to have a nice telephoto in that 400 mil range, and then a nice landscape lens if you're thinking of taking one of those along as well, just for some of that landscape photography and lighthouses and seashores and cliffs and things like that.
Perfect, thank you. So has NatHab made sure that there will be no mosquitoes or black flies for me to worry about on this trip?
I've got that one on the list. We're doing our best. I was just chatting with our local partners there. No, so anywhere we go, as you guys know, especially some of these areas, we'll talk about the climate and stuff, particularly in your welcome dinner. We'll get into all of that. We are in some of those subarctic climates, and there can be standing water, and there can be black flies and bugs. But what I really love about these coastal trips is we're on the coast, right? The wind's blowing, it's coming off the water. There's often a little bit of a breeze that keeps those black flies away, that keeps those mosquitoes away. If we find ourselves in sheltered areas or some spots like that, we might end up needing to pull out that bug repellent. But in general, in my personal experiences leading trips and my personal trips, when we're in these coastal environments, we get pretty lucky with bugs. And if it's a wind-free day and our price that we pay for the wind-free day is a little bit of bugs for those flat water conditions, I'm often willing to pay it. But yeah, we've got bug repellent in the vans. But like I mentioned, if you got a small one, you want to carry in your person, never a bad idea, but there should always be lots of extra bug repellent kicking around.
Good to know. So let's talk about food real quick. When we're eating breakfast or lunch, are we going to be at a very specific place for those meals, or is it going to vary? Are we going to be eating a bagged lunch, for instance?
It varies so frequently. So our times in St. John's, we're going to be dining in the hotel. For most of our times in Trinity, we're going to be dining at different places. One of the mornings, we're up early to visit that puffin colony. We grab some bag lunches and we kind of eat them on the go, but it's a nice local area that we're grabbing them from. Some of the mornings, we're doing a sit-down breakfast, pardon me. When we're in Battle Harbor, it's great. We're in that kind of communal dining hall. We come in every morning, same time, have a nice, beautiful breakfast together, talk about the activities for the day and kind of set off. So it varies so much throughout the trip, but we're always trying to look for those nice local meals, nice fresh meals. So if we're taking bagged lunches or we're taking bagged breakfasts, it's often coming from the places that we're staying or being picked up along the way. And I've had all these personally, all really lovely options. And same with those bagged meals, always going to be able to cater to any dietary concerns at all.
Great to know. Thank you. So there are quite a few people who would like to know, Anthony, if we are going to see an iceberg.
Definitely, yeah. So common question. You might have noticed all the photography from this webinar was my own photography. We didn't see any icebergs in the photos. We saw a few icebergs on the trip. So we were there early June, and next year the trips are getting a little bit earlier. So starting at, I believe, June 14th or around that time. So we are getting a little bit earlier. The earlier you come on the trip, the greater chances that you can see icebergs. That being said, there are a number of years in Newfoundland, Labrador, where we see one or zero icebergs for the entire year. I also have friends that have been in August. They've been up to that Battle Harbor area and they've seen a couple icebergs. And that would be maybe the difference of seeing an iceberg on the horizon, which is really amazing, or maybe seeing a few chunks of smaller ice. So the ice that we were seeing on this past trip a couple of weeks ago, often smaller ice that's kind of drifted into those areas. So always an opportunity throughout the entire timeline that NatHab is running those trips. Better opportunity up in Battle Harbor in particular, and a better opportunity if you're coming a little bit earlier in the season as well. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. So, we're just about out of time, but I wanted to ask, is there anything that happened recently or anything that you've seen on the trip that is just so amazing and incredible that you want to share with us?
Oh, definitely. And like I mentioned, it's a trip like this that's so varied. We move around, we see so much. It's hard to choose a highlight. So for me, I love the birds. So photographing some of those seabirds, getting to see these colonies of birds, where like I say, it's one thing to describe it and say it's 100,000 birds or read it on paper. It's another thing to actually go and experience it and have these birds flying all around you. So that's always a highlight in terms of wildlife. But like a lot of the trips, it ends up being the people that we meet, the places that we get to go see, these local communities. And Newfoundland Labrador has just been absolutely incredible in terms of the people that have been so welcoming to us as we've been traveling around. And it's just been incredible getting up to that Battle Harbor area. So can't wait to take guests out there. It's just a number of days, and really looking forward to flying out tomorrow, meeting my first group of guests on Sunday. And yeah, just really happy I got to share this with you guys. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Really appreciate it, Anthony. Well, unfortunately, that will be the last question that we do have time for. So if you do have any closing comments that you'd like to add, feel free to go ahead and do that.
Thanks, Rob. And yeah, I'll just repeat it again. Thanks so much for taking your time to join us today, guys. I think it's a beautiful trip for those of us that have already signed up. Hopefully we answered a lot of those questions you had lingering. I'm really looking forward to getting out there and exploring. And for those folks that are kind of on the edge or just wanted to learn a little bit more, hopefully you have a better idea of what the trip looks like. It is a beautiful trip. I can guarantee a wonderful time out there, and I'm really looking forward to it. So thanks again, Rob, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
Anthony, thank you for taking the time today to present for us. And I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us today. So if you are interested in information on how you could travel with NatHab, or you have more questions about this amazing trip, please give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. And if you're part of a photo club and would like NatHab to speak to your members about nature and travel photography, email us at webinars@nathab.com. Join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.